All right, I'd like to call the Tuesday, February 6, 2024 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That flag is going to kill me these days. Okay, so I actually have a few things to go over under Chairman's announcements tonight. I'm going to start off with the Board of Selectmen employee recognition. We have quite a few folks that are in here that the board would like to recognize for some of their outstanding service to the community. So I'm just going to... It's all right.
He got my vote. He got him to be quiet.
Absolutely. Does he want to be chairman for a day? He's welcome to come and take it. All right. I'm going to start off. I'm going to kind of go down through situation by situation and what led to the recognition for each of these people. The first one was dated November 24th, 2023. And this is for Patrice Russo and Sharon Began. Began. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on Friday, November 24th, 2023, the police department responded to a disabled motor vehicle on Southwest Main Street about 1 mile prior to the Connecticut line. This vehicle was a privately owned wheelchair-accessible van that had gone off the road and sustained 2 flat tires on the driver's side. The female operator was extremely upset because her quadriplegic husband was secured in his wheelchair in the back of the van. The van was inoperable as they only had 1 spare tire. Police and fire departments made every effort to find private ambulance company with a chairlift van for the ambulance, but had no luck finding anyone who could assist. After about an hour, Officer Jackie Brimmer contacted Patrice Russo and asked if we could utilize the Adult Social Center van to transport these people back to their home in Milford. At that time, she was able to contact Sharon, and she agreed to come into work, grab the van, and transport these people to their home. Without their assistance, there is no doubt that these people would have been stranded for hours, and we were unable to find anyone else with the capabilities to transport them. So Patrice and I'm sorry. Sharon, you literally saved the day for these folks. So if you folks, do you want me to kind of go down through these one at a time?
Can I present them?
Yeah, please present them with those.
So this is for Sharon and Patrice.
So this brings us to our next one. December 9th, 2023, we have dispatcher Delaney Laflamme and dispatcher Danielle Blome. On Saturday, December 9th, 2023 at approximately 4:00 p.m., dispatcher Delaney Laflamme answered multiple 911 calls regarding a serious motor vehicle crash on Webster Street. This incident involves numerous vehicles, several injuries, entrapments, and a vehicle fire. Throughout this incident, the dispatcher demonstrated exceptional poise and professionalism. Her ability to maintain composure, coupled with her skill in gathering detailed information, significantly enhanced our response efforts. Throughout the course of this incident, she effectively managed both police and fire radios while coordinating mutual aid support, culminating in the deployment of 7 ambulances, 2 heavy-duty rescue trucks, and 2 life flight helicopters and various other assets. On the same date, dispatcher Danielle Blome responded promptly to a call for assistance with this incident in the communications center. Despite it being her day off, she immediately responded to assist without hesitation and immersed herself in the communications operations, assisting with the coordination of additional mutual aid resources and managing the very busy radio transmissions between both police and fire. Her swift action and willingness to respond and assist during her off hours exemplify her profound dedication to the department and the community at large. So, Delaney and Danielle, I believe we have things for both of you as well. Patrice, you're like the star of the day today. You're showing up again. So December 26, 2023, Patrice Russo and Officer Jackie Brimmer. On December 26, 2023, Adult Social Center Director Patrice Russo received a call from a 66-year-old woman who was driven to Webster on December 18th from North Carolina by her abusive boyfriend, and she was left there with nothing. The Webster Senior Center was closed due to the holiday, which is why she reached out to Patrice. The woman was advised to go to the Webster Police Department, as they have a program in place that could assist her, and she was referred to Tri-Valley Elder Services as well. The next morning, Patrice followed up with her and was appalled to hear that this woman was still sitting at the McDonald's in Webster during the day and wandering the streets at night. After calling 16 shelters in and around the area and exhausting every resource that she had, Patrice reached out to Officer Brimmer, who responded with the police department's co-response clinician, Danielle Mikado, from Advocates, who was working with her. Within a half hour, they were able to secure a place for this woman to stay, provided her with food and many additional resources. This was a job well done by Patrice, Officer Brimmer, and Danielle Mikado. If they hadn't assisted this woman, she would still be living on the streets. And thank you to these dedicated professionals who went above and beyond and were quick to respond to a senior in crisis. All right, so we have another one dated January 8, 2024, which is Exceptional Service Fire Chief John J. Furno. On December 18, 2023, there was a significant power outage that affected many senior residents. Chief Furno reached out to the senior center and, well, actually it came from Patrice, so reached out to her department, regularly working together on a senior population during power outages or natural disasters. After calling the senior residents residing on the streets without power, a few of the older residents couldn't be reached. Chief Furno personally went door to door to check on these people to ensure they were safe. The next day, as temperatures began to drop, along with an uncertain restoration time, he went back to visit these senior residents. At this time, he was able to encourage them to relocate to family members. He was also in constant contact with Patrice to make sure that he didn't miss any of the senior residents. The safety of this community, especially the senior population during the outage, was obviously a top priority. However, his mission to personally check on these residents multiple times to ensure their safety and well-being personally was just above and beyond. And quoted from the senior residents he visited during the outage, one was, "I couldn't have felt more special when the chief himself showed up at my door, and so thankful he talked us into leaving our home. We were getting so cold, we just kept going to our car to warm up. It's a pleasure working with such a dedicated professional," and that's from Patrice Russo. So, John? Okay. And we have our last one, which was a submission from Chris Popka, and this is Exceptional Service Recognition for Jen Larson. I'm writing regarding Jen Larson's efforts helping the town on December 27, 2023. A time-sensitive issue arose for Matt Wojcik, and he came to our office for answers. I was working with a vendor inspecting warehouses both in Douglas and Uxbridge, and so was out of the office and unable to help. Jen took it upon herself to find the answers Matt needed that day and address the issue, as I would expect any employee of any department to do, except Jen went above and beyond her role in the assessor's office through sheer tenacity. She figured out the information needed was from the planning board meetings in the early 2000s. She found those minutes and read through them to find the votes the board had taken and provided that information to Matt so he could act. The easy thing to do would have been to pass it off as not her job and not her department. She stepped up in an effort to help the town, and I truly appreciate that. So, Jen, if you're here. So that is all of our employee recognitions, but personally, I'd like to say that in my time here, I have never not been amazed by the level of dedication that comes from each and every one of our departments and municipal employees. These are people that have been with this town for a long time, some of us not so long, but have been through this town through its budget woes, taking departments that were full-time to part-time, and just never stopping to just step up and just get things done to make sure that the community never feels any lapse in service for any reason. They're truly, truly special people. So we're all very lucky to have them. It does bring me to my second chairman's announcement, which isn't as happy of news. Letting the community know that I have tendered my resignation on the Board of Selectmen effective the last meeting in February. I will be dealing with a lot of things for my professional career that gets in the way of me being able to serve the community as effectively as I should. Once I do step down, my vice chairman through succession will be stepping up as the new chairman of the board. I work with a great group of people that are here. It's very bittersweet for me to, after all these years, to finally be stepping away. But I feel that the town is in genuinely good hands, and seeing, as I said, the dedication from all the folks that are currently working here. The residents of Douglas have absolutely nothing to worry about. You're in very good hands. So thank you. All right. So with all that being done, is there anybody here for anything that's not currently posted on our agenda? Seeing as none, we will go right into the first agenda meeting item. We have a common victualler license application for Extreme Nutrition and possible votes.
Jamie.
Is she? Is Jamie Fowler here? Jamie, come on up.
Not sure what it is. I don't have any idea what I'm doing.
It's okay.
Have a seat.
Have a seat.
Maybe so comfortable. I gotta sit down? Oh, okay.
No, you get to sit down. That's
You
a
get
good
to sit-
sign.
Well, the town nurse is going to come in and take blood in a couple
Okay,
of
all
minutes.
right, excellent.
All right. So this is your first common vic license with? Excellent. And she has everything that she needs in the packet?
Yep.
All the inspections?
Payment, yeah, the only thing I'm transparent about is when they were transitioning from BZ to Extreme, the inspection was done in December.
Okay.
Amy was involved with the business then, she was there.
Okay,
So the inspection report is listed as BZ Nutrition.
okay. But nothing's changed, still valid, right?
Yeah, everything's staying exactly the same.
An
I'm
issue
literally
with
just
the
changing the name.
extinguisher.
There was a
which-
fire extinguisher that was on the floor, and we put it up on the bracket. It was just the wrong bracket size, so we just replaced the
And the
bracket.
report is in your packet. if you want. But everything else is there.
So did you acquire the business from the previous owners, or
I'm in the process of doing that
in the
right now.
process of it?
So, yeah.
Nice.
Yep, so we just wanted to take care of everything before it actually turned over.
Well, that's exciting. I don't have any, anybody have any questions of the applicant? No? No?
No, I welcome you. Yes, absolutely.
Always happy to have new business, even if it's same business changing name.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the common vic license.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 See, that was easy.
And we didn't even take blood. That's on your renewal.
Once the license is
Okay,
signed
all right, great.
tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So our next agenda item is a discussion with the tax assessor regarding property assessments and possible votes. At our previous meeting, we had some residents with some questions and concerns regarding the assessment and valuations, so we all said you're the guy to talk to.
Thank you. If you give me a moment, I'm going to connect via Zoom so we can have a slide presentation.
Absolutely.
while we wait for Chris, Gene, as I sit here and wait for Chris, thinking taxes, what are the excise taxes due on the car?
The excise was just mailed out, they're due. I just posted. Oh, good.
Of this month?
I'm sorry?
Of this month?
Yes, and on behalf of the town of Douglas, we'd like to thank anybody that purchased new vehicles this year.
I thought you were going to get a lecture from Gene for not knowing when that was due.
I want, yeah, right? I want to know why my Honda Accord, my 2009 Honda Accord is valued higher than my 2016 Subaru Crosstrek.
Should have bought a 67 Camaro, mine's only 250.
I'm teasing you, I'm just waiting for Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Was your Honda Accord 5250?
5581.
You must have had a higher version than I did. What are yours?
2016.
It's because your Accord is famous in Douglas, that's why.
theft.
Only your Accord. They want to take your car.
Yeah, right.
What color is it? Should have got a black.
Yeah, it would have been worth less as a black Honda Accord.
All right.
We might want to stop.
So am I okay on audio?
You're good.
All right. Making sure I wasn't giving feedback to the system, so. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about the Davis Street values. I don't know if the board remembers at the classification hearing, I did give a warning that the values in that area had gone up. I had given a warning. Can you hear me now? Let me- All right, how's that?
Yeah, now they can. They're all nodding yes.
Yes.
All right, I had warned you in November at the classification hearing that that area of town had seen significant increases in value based on sales. So I had put together a presentation here. Some of this is a rehash of what was presented at that meeting. So through the chair, for the benefit of the folks behind me. And I've added in some additional information specific to those industrial sales that cause the effect, and some ideas for a path forward for, addressing, potentially making changes so that, it could be with new information provided through taxpayers in the abatement process, through some outside sources that possibly, we can make adjustments to those values. And it's something certainly, I'm willing to do. It doesn't help anybody having properties overvalued. Part of this presentation will go through the fact that the town doesn't get any extra revenue. Nobody gets any kudos for doing it. It's really a no-win situation when something like this does happen. So it's in the interest of everyone to make sure it's right, and that's what we want to get to. So, again, through the chair, for the benefit of everyone, a little bit of education on how values are set for properties in town, regardless of whether it's these industrial properties, single-family homes, or whatever. Every year, we're required to have assessments at 100% fair market. Every 5 years, that's audited by the Department of Revenue. We do that through a variety of tools. The most common is a sales analysis, and I'm going to go through that tonight because that was what we did for this assessment here. This year was what's called an interim year adjustment. The steps that are taken in the assessor's office are very much the same. It's just not an in-depth audit from the Department of Revenue where they almost literally look over our shoulder. They go out in the field and actually visit a couple hundred properties in town, literally make sure that the assessor's office is doing their job to their standards. The 4 years in between, it's far less invasive, but the statistical analysis that we do on sales is essentially the same. And I just want to walk through that real quick so people understand how the values were arrived at. Before we get into the sales, I just wanted to highlight how we come up with the tax rate. I know there's some confusion that as values increase, the town gets more revenue, and that honestly cannot be further from the truth. The amount of revenue the town can collect in taxes is governed by Proposition 2.5. It's essentially you get 2.5% more than you were legally allowed to collect in the previous year, plus any new growth, which is the value of new construction. So if somebody builds a new house and the taxes on a new house are $1,000, the town can collect $1,000 more in taxes. That doesn't really affect other property owners' tax bill. So really, it's when you look at your tax bill, you're looking for that increase of 2.5%, because that's what we're allowed to increase in taxes. You've probably heard from assessors, values go up, tax rates go down, and I'm actually going to illustrate that through this process. So here's when we get into our sales analysis. We use this for adjusting our valuation models. And this is how we set the value of all properties in town. The way the regulations from the Department of Revenue are set up is that your largest class of properties, which for Douglas is single-family homes, have to have what's called an assessment-to-sales ratio, a median assessment-to-sales ratio between 90 and 110%. The reality is if I took the largest class of properties and assessed them at over 100%, they would be all in here in a meeting with us. So the reality is we target between 90 and 100% for our largest class. Now, each subclass of properties, so when we look down at the bottom of this slide, you see condos, two-family, three-family apartments, vacant land, commercial, industrial. All of those both need to be within that 90 to 110% and within 5 points of your largest class. So when we look at this median ASR of single-family homes of 94, what that means is every other class needs to be between 90 and 99%. So that's why you see all these ratios down here are all meet those guidelines. If we don't meet those statistical measures, we don't get a tax rate. We don't get a tax rate, we don't get real estate tax revenue. So what we do is we adjust the models to make the sales match these statistical guidelines. When we do that, this is what's called the LA4. This is a form that's submitted to the Department of Revenue. It's the count and value of all property in town. And when we looked at, if you remember back at that tax rate calculation, the value of all property in town was the denominator of that fraction. So we're looking at one piece of the mathematical equation as far as setting the tax rate. The next piece of it is the critical piece where we show that the town doesn't get any extra revenue when certain properties increase in value. Again, highlighting this, there's that $1,590,943,479. That's the taxable value of all real and personal property in town. So now we're just looking up here on the tax levy. How much money can the town collect in taxes? That's the number that's governed by Proposition 2.5. Says we can increase by, and if we look at this slide, in 2023, we were able to collect 18.5 million, a little more, in tax revenue. We're allowed to collect 2.5% more every year. That's Prop 2.5. That's exactly how it works. And the value of new construction. Oops. Pardon me. And the value of new construction. So that's the 516,000. So that's the value of all the new houses that have been built, or the revenue from the value of all the houses being built, everything like that. We add into that debt exclusions. Those are things that are voted at both town meeting and an election. That's where the taxpayers have said we want to collect a little more than Prop 2.5 for these specific projects. So the town does get to collect that. And this is some mathematical information here. Every penny on the tax rate with a $1.59 billion assessment is $15,900 of revenue. So this $15,500.98 of excess levy capacity is a difference between what we legally can collect in taxes and what we can mathematically collect in taxes. Because if we added 1 penny to the tax rate, we would then be over the amount we could legally collect. So the town is collecting $21,509,556 in taxes, irrelevant of the value of any property in town. All the values do is take that number and chop it into pieces. So I like to highlight that point. I believe I did it both in the classification hearing, but emphasizing it here that, increasing the value of their properties doesn't benefit the town in any way. It's just an important distinction to make that, when you have something like this happen, it is truly a no-win situation. No one really benefits to any tangible amount. So again, here we have now the numerator, the denominator, the full, and anybody that's looked at their tax bill or watched classification hearing or follows taxation in town, they know the tax rate's 1352. It's math. That's how we arrive there. Just a graph of the tax rate, I believe, beginning in 2002 through 2024. As you can see, when the blue bars go up, those are the value of properties in town. The green line reduces. That's what you'd expect when we always say that values go up, tax rate goes down. That's the numbers put the pictures. So I just wanted to bring it back to this slide again. You're going to see this a couple times. Again, when we talk about the assessment to sales ratio, the median ASR for our largest class, and then each subclass needs to be within 5 points, and within that 90 to 110%. Another number I wanted to point out here is what's called a COD, coefficient of dispersion. Very statistical name. All that really means is when you talk about the median value of a property, how far do the other properties differ from that median? So are they, if they were a median ASR of 94 and all the other properties were in 30s or 180s, that ASR would be huge because the numbers are meaningless. They're not close. They're not, tight to that line. The guidelines are for under 10 for your primary class and a COD under 15 for each subclass. So, and the reason why they allow a larger COD under the subclasses is because you have a lot fewer properties to get that statistical number for. I mean, especially in a town that's 93, 94% residential and 5, 6, 7% commercial and industrial. When we look into sales of those, you have very few because you have very few properties that, in the population as a whole. So before we made any adjustments to the industrial sales, this is what they looked like. So the 2023 assessed value of those properties at 120 Davis Street, 183 Davis Street, those were the two that we did have that I was unable to code out. When we talk about coding out, calling them invalid sales for whatever reason, they were not in the market. These were both on MLS, so they did go through a real estate broker as part of the sale. Sale to an abutter, sale of personal property, any of those things. We couldn't find anything on these properties to say they're not valid sale. And quite frankly, that is uncommon. Most times with commercial industrial property sales, there's always something going on, and it's a matter of finding it. In these cases, we were unable to find it. Unable to code them out means you have to use them in your analysis. Means you have to make them meet those statistical guidelines in order to get a tax rate set with the Department of Revenue. So what does that mean? Just like residential or any other ones, we go into the models, we adjust the models to try and make those statistics meet the guidelines. Generally speaking, when you're looking at properties like this in a tight location, what they like to see us do is use a pricing neighborhood. So in this case, we sort of took the 146 Blackstone corridor. It's highly recognized with the Department of Revenue that is currently a hot industrial area, from Sutton through Douglas through Uxbridge. not only mega warehouses, but other industrial park and other industrial development. So in this case, we took sort of the Gilboa Street interchange area and Davis Street from Monroe to the property, to the Uxbridge line, included that in here. When you do that, when you take and create pricing neighborhoods, that pricing neighborhood goes on to the land. And it's very much cleaner in residential than industrial, 'cause industrial and commercial, the building values are a lot harder. They're a lot less homogeneous. And again, with residential, you have 4,000 houses in Douglas, whereas commercial and industrial, the numbers are much lower. But the concept being that if you have this industrial building, the industrial building is worth the same whether it's here or there. If it's worth more because it's here, it's not the building that's worth more, it's the land the building sits on. That land is more desirable. So that's why in this case, when you have a pricing neighborhood from the assessing world, that applies to land. And so that's why, we look at these, the buildings are all, didn't really change much on building values. They would have gone up or down as building values overall went. And then we go in and we look at the models, and then that models reflected the impact of pricings on land. I wanted to point out something on this slide here. What's interesting from a statistical standpoint is when you look at these parcels and the ASRs, and the median ASRs are all 0.63, you see that coefficient of dispersion is 0. That's because everyone's right on the line. Everyone's got the same median. So that's when we talk about how far they're spread out. This next slide. I just simply took the rounding off to show that there is a little bit of variance in there, but that was just sort of interesting for me from a mathematical standpoint, seeing that COD of 0. It's not common. So what we did is we put the adjustments into the numbers, and even here you can see there's still a lot of variance on these. We have a 105 and an 82. But putting them together as a whole, they do meet the statistical guidelines of 5 points of our residential between 90 and 110%, and within 5% of our largest class, and being a subclass from the major class, coefficient of dispersion below 15. So that's where we adjust the models and put that information in, and then once we have the sales meet statistical guidelines, we apply those to every other property in town. So that's how assessors across the state generally or really value properties. You look at your sales, you make your models meet for your sales statistics. Once those models meet and you're comfortable with them, then you apply those models across the rest of the properties. So when you have, in the case of Douglas, 100 houses sell and you're setting the value from 4,000, that's how it happens. And that's just general mass appraisal. So again, just bringing this back and showing, that where that 94 came from on the ASR for the industrial properties. It was those two sales, and so that's how the values came. Clearly, there were, a lot of upset taxpayers. I don't blame them. I'm one, if anybody asks me, and even at the classification hearing, I say it through the chair to the taxpayers. You should expect your tax bill to go up a little bit every year. If it goes up more, you should be calling me because something either went wrong or something drastic changed in the models. The folks behind me are certainly, fell into that something changed in the models. Whether it's right or not, my hunches and the initial information I've received says no, there's room for adjustment, there's room to fix it. How we get there, it's going to be some work. It's going to be looking at both individual parcels and any unique characteristics about those parcels, visiting the parcels, making sure that the information we have on them is correct, making sure that, our records accurately reflect what's there. I think the manager had, given me an analogy, and I actually was using it with one of the taxpayers. You have a dark room in your house, all of a sudden you put a real bright light in there. You start seeing the bad paint, you start seeing, so when you shine this spotlight on this area by setting these values, we see the flaws in other areas, whether it's a data collection flaw, whether it was something that was meaningless when we weren't using this industrial good neighborhood that is now significant now, that may apply to some parcels, may not apply to other parcels. So when I look here at the next steps, the abatement deadline is passed. I'm not sure if everyone that's here tonight has filed or not, but the steps will apply almost the same for anyone, whether they've applied or not, with one exception, and I'll highlight that. But, we'll sit there and we'll go parcel by parcel and look for, the two biggest ones are wetlands and easements. And quite frankly, some information that's not is whether there's building on it. That is an easy one that we already have information on, as far as whether things are built or not, has a drastic impact on the sale price of properties over there. Visiting parcels, making sure the information we have on buildings are accurate. Like I said, checking wetlands, seeing what they are. There are pipeline easements, so in commercial industrial property, that may have a more significant impact than it would on residential, because in residential, you just build your house where the pipeline isn't, where that easement isn't, whereas if you're a commercial industrial property, you may want to have parking or equipment storage that you may not be allowed to put over the pipeline. So things like that, the models didn't account for, but were meaningless without having this this neighborhood factor on them. That, it does apply to both the prime lot and excess land. Adjusting parcels for any of those influence factors, shape, topography, things like that can be applied. If you have a vacant parcel that you have to excavate down 100 feet, that can be a significant factor. Again, that may not have been meaningful without that factor applied. Once we have all those parcel information correct, then we'll take a look at the models and say, okay, so we've got all these influences correct on the parcels. Then let's see if the models maybe the models make sense after we do that. I doubt it. Then we go and take a look at the models and say, okay, do we have to refine how the models are done now with all this new information? Maybe we find that the influence factors on one business pushed them way too low, and another business didn't make enough of a difference, and then we can adjust the models so that everyone is treated fairly. For folks that did apply for abatement, we'll present all these changes to the Board of Assessors, and we'll get those bills adjusted accordingly, provided they agree with me. Going through all this work, I will be your best advocate going to the Board of Assessors, because I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't believe it, and I wouldn't present it to them if I didn't either. I do think there's certainly room for adjustment on these properties. For anyone that has not filed for an abatement, you're not out of luck. Your changes just won't be reflected on the 2024 bill. Any changes that would be applied will just apply to the 2025 going forward. Unfortunately, with no application, everyone's hands are tied at this point. I know the point was made at the original Selectmen's meeting that to protect the taxpayers' rights, they did need to file an abatement with our office, because the Board of Assessors is the office that has is the board that has jurisdiction. So I did receive a number. I have not looked into them yet. I wanted to wait for the deadline to pass so that we could look at them individually and holistically. You can't take a look and have adjustments for this parcel because they make this argument, and an adjustment not made on that parcel because they didn't make that argument. You want to make sure that you're taking all the arguments, collecting them all into one, especially in a scenario like this, collecting them all together, seeing what aspects are apply to multiple parcels, what apply to like an easement or wetlands, what undeveloped, developed, building sizes, anything like that. So we want to look at them holistically.
Quick question, if I could.
Certainly.
So for the residents that have filled out their abatement process while you're going through, doing your research, you know, trying to figure out if the tax rate is right or whatever their tax bill is, regarding their tax payments, what exactly do these folks do?
I will always recommend they pay their tax payment.
Okay.
And there's a very specific and important reason, and everybody, please listen. If you disagree with the Board of Assessors' decision, whether they grant an abatement or deny an abatement, if you incur interest, you may not be eligible to appeal that decision to the appellate tax board. You may not be able to go to Boston and challenge the decision of the local board. So pay the taxes, and the town has an account set aside with money to reimburse anybody, but that the state law is set up so that if you incur interest, you may not be eligible to go to the appellate tax board. You may not be able to appeal the decision of the Board of Assessors. So I just want to make sure that that is, through the chair, very, very clear, because, again, I don't want anyone losing their rights to appeal. I mean, I always tell taxpayers, I'm happy to be wrong. I can make the best case to the Board of Assessors. If they disagree, fine, they want to go to the appellate tax board. If the appellate tax board, who sees cases from all over the state, so they have a lot more information, says I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, and I'm happy to put their decision into our models. But if you don't pay the tax bill, if you incur interest, you may lose that right to go to the appellate tax board.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Yes, thank you. And so the last point I wanted to make on this is essentially, you know, reviewing the parcels that we applied this to and making sure that it was applied correctly. I know one of the questions that came up was Legacy Circle, the parcels on Legacy Circle. When we did try to capture the parcels that should be into this, we were looking at Davis Street from Monroe to the Uxbridge line. When they did that subdevelopment, those parcels were moved to Legacy Circle addresses. So when we searched, they didn't come in and they weren't moved. So we know that there's that flaw, and any feedback, like I said, we get from other taxpayers or any other data collection we do during this process. If we determine, we can figure out more should be, less should be, an individual one along the way maybe should or shouldn't be. There's possible backland parcels that are under common ownership that should possibly be in, should not possibly be in. That's an issue that we can certainly address as well throughout this whole process. So at that point, I guess I'd like to take any questions you have, and I'll answer them the best I can. I just have one caveat I should say, is that anything that's been presented to me as part of or in an abatement application is not public record, so I wouldn't be able to make any comment on that. And if you think of filing for an abatement, and if you give me any financial or sensitive information, you wouldn't want it given out in this forum.
Fair enough. Anybody on the board have any questions?
I do if nobody else does.
Anybody in the audience have any questions?
No, don't go to the audience.
Not yet.
I said, I do if nobody else
Well,
would. Yeah, I don't mean the audience or the town. When these property owners came in at the last meeting, I specifically asked them, because they're going back and forth and different values and going up. So I asked a specific question about land value. Right? Forget about the improvements on it, the land values. And there was a lot of inconsistencies. So like everything else that I do, I did my own checking. I went on the assessor's site and I started pulling up property cards and stuff. And the ranges are all over the place. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it didn't make any sense to them, and that's why they came in. I give them credit. They were excited, but they were polite and professional when they came in. it doesn't make any logical sense when I start looking at it, when I look at the property cards. Some properties are at 60,000, some are at 183,000, some of them are at, I think it's somewhere around $4,500 that I found one. It was 9,600 for 4 acres. So the numbers are all over the place, and I think that's part of the confusion for these property owners, that they can't. First, it was the shock seeing that their numbers went up as high as they did, but I was looking for consistencies. As far as those two properties, 120 and 183, there's multiple reasons why somebody would overpay for those. I don't think you could probably find too many buyers to buy either one of those buildings for that kind of money. And it could be that maybe you need a tax break that particular year, and you're gonna just spend more money than you need. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. Not trying to get you to go in any direction, but I listened to what these people were saying, did my own research on it. I know the individual that owned those two properties. I know what his portfolio is. That's part of my thinking. I'm not just making an accusation. There's some basis to what I'm saying. So I think what they're looking for is some consistency or an explanation as to why it's such a drastic difference. Is Legacy Circle that new subdivision there?
Yes.
Okay. Those values are real low.
Yeah, and as I
Right.
said, we
I know that.
identified why those were
So
missed.
I can't rationalize that, because I look at that as a mining operation. There's actually product being mined off the site. I can't see the values being as low as they are that are up there. So for nothing else, I'm just giving you my thoughts, that's all. Not criticizing what you're doing. I think you did a lot of work, and you believe in what you did, but there's something seems like it's off somewhere.
So if I could answer a little bit of that, I believe in what I did based on the information I had at the time. There's more information now. Without having examples of which parcels are and are not higher or lower, it may depend on whether they are deemed buildable or not buildable. We didn't do a parcel-by-parcel review of what was buildable to buildable. We applied the changes. So when you have what's considered a buildable lot, there would be what's called a prime lot on that, which is valued much higher than excess land. Part of the modeling that was done, excess land went from about 7,500 an acre to 100,000 an acre. So drastic. So when you talk about a parcel that's 4 acres and you said around 9,000 an acre, 9,600. That sounds to me like it possibly was coded as an unbuildable parcel. Those are the things that could be either confirmed or fixed on when we talk about doing a parcel-by-parcel review to make sure that the information we have that we're basing the information on is correct. And when I say it could have been meaningless before because the parcel was worth so little that it didn't matter, then the neighbor's parcel went up significantly, now it matters.
Right.
So that's a hunch of what you may be seeing if you're seeing inconsistency on more or less frontage lots on there, plus the
There's
number
another
of...
piece that has a lot of road frontage that's on Davis Street. It's about 6 acres of land. It's valued at about $60,000 an acre. If you didn't take into account any wetlands or anything like that, I would assume that that would be figured as a buildable lot if you didn't look in to see if it's wet or any of that stuff.
When I say we haven't looked into wetlands, all the properties I've looked at as people have come in and asked questions, there's two things with wetlands. One is there any buildable land? If it's just wet and it's considered unbuildable, then it's coded as unbuildable and priced without that prime lot. And then there's actually having wetlands adjustments on the land. Like I said, I haven't seen any wetlands adjustments on the land lines on any of those parcels. And again, potentially not meaningless, but when you're talking $7,500 an acre, a 40% adjustment is $3,000 an acre on 2 acres. You're talking $20, $30 on a tax bill versus a 40% adjustment on $100,000 an acre. Again, something becomes less meaningful to being very significant. So those are things that we, certainly look at throughout this and that's when I talk about influence adjustments on the parcels, what those actually should be. Are they applied? In most cases, they have not been applied. And so getting those onto those parcels where it's appropriate.
Yeah, just some of the statements that they made. One property owner came in, it was like 110, 111, and 400,000 for the land value. So
Yeah.
just trying to rationalize that as the high.
Yeah, and it's certainly, looking at the parcels, I'd be able to give you a much better answer on
Yeah, I
as to
know you're
what.
going to go through all the
Yeah.
abatement stuff. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to get you some of the thoughts that
Yep.
that
No,
are in my head that
consistency
got put
is,
there a couple weeks ago, so.
in an ideal world, everything would be a condo, because when you go into a condo association, they're all within $1,000 of each other. And that's very, very easy. It's, but having consistency as you go down the street and you look at two properties that are the same or similar, you would hope to have similar valuations on them, yes.
Is the biggest driving force of this, those two properties, that's all?
Yes, and unfortunately, when we look at 183 Davis Street that sold in 2022 for 1.24 million, sold in 2023 for 1.6 million and change. So we got to figure that out too at some point. Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is for, we can't call the 1.29 million invalid sale if the person was able to turn around and sell it for 25% premium a year later. My job is to measure the market, so at a certain point, I still have to stay true to that somehow, as well as dealing with, wetlands and easements and things like that. So therein lies the rub a little bit.
So I guess the process now, you're just going to do a complete reevaluation of that area, or you're just going to do the individual lots that came in, property owners that came in for their abatement?
No, we're going to do the whole area. So that's why I got to over here. If you filed for an abatement, you'll get an adjustment on your 2024 bill that was issued in December, based on any of the changes that were made. Bill paid timely, you get the right to appeal that to Boston and further do that. Further appeal that decision if you disagree with the local board and the work we do here. And if you have not filed, like I said, the adjustment would apply to your fiscal 2025 bill. And at this point, everyone's hands are tied, no matter how much we'd want to help without having an abatement application filed timely on February 1st. I don't have any authority to act. Well, I don't have any authority to act anyway. The Board of Assessors has no authority to act.
So the property owner's got to be in fear every time a dumb sale happens?
Unfortunately, yes. And that's, whether it's industrial or, last year, I think you remember, was the waterfront folks that kind of took a hit like this, because the waterfront sales were significantly higher. Percentage-wise, not as high as these, but, their land values went from, about 90,000 acre, or 90,000 a buildable lot to 240,000 a buildable lot. And that didn't matter whether they had close to a little over 2 acres or a 4,000 square foot lot. They all went to being worth 240.
So-
And again, it's based on sales.
So situations like this could happen in any town in the Commonwealth?
Yes.
Like somebody turns around and spends $6 million on a parcel of land where everything else around it's worth $5,000. As long as that sale goes through, it's considered to be part of the levy.
And you're not able to prove that it was an invalid sale.
Okay.
A lot of times, you can look at a sale and find, some prior relationship between the buyer and the seller, sale to an abutter. The seller did a $500,000 office upfit, something that was not, that's in the sale price that would not be otherwise reflected in the assessment. Inclusion of personal property, common things that would code out commercial sales. Generally speaking, as assessors, we look at any commercial and industrial sale and say it's invalid. You assume it's invalid because there's almost always something that you can use to code it out. We looked at this one, we looked at it with the Department of Revenue, and just couldn't find that thread to pull to call these invalid, and once we couldn't, then we had to put them in our analysis.
So this one parcel sold and then a year later sold at 25% higher?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you stopped at Monroe Street and you didn't just take the whole commercial section of Davis Street?
It was just where the properties were bracketed at. They bracketed at either end from that. Monroe was around the 120, and then 183 on the line.
That's how it's typically done? You wouldn't do the whole section?
It can be a judgment call.
Being condensed is more of a chance of it driving up the individual number. That's why I'm asking that question.
The only sales we had were those two, so certainly didn't make sense applying it townwide to all commercial industrial because they were focused in that one area.
The entire street is industrial, right?
Yeah, I have to refresh my memory. I don't remember how far past Monroe it goes as far as industrial. When you run into the schools, and it's mostly all houses beyond that point too, which this didn't apply to any houses on, any residential property, even though it's in the industrial zone. On that section, it didn't apply to residential. It was only to the commercial and industrial properties. So I'm not sure there's, like I said, you run into the high school, and I think marijuana plant maybe is on the corner there.
Yeah, I don't know if 93 Davis Street's included in your assessment or not. That's just on the other side of Monroe Street.
Yeah.
Would that formula work in reverse if sales were lower?
Exactly. Exactly. The analysis we go through on that sales, if we would, so when we go back to this slide, where we started at 63, if the sales were higher, say there were 163, I'd have to pull the models down to get them to meet those statistical guidelines. So if the sales were lower, we would make that adjustment as well. And unfortunately here, if the sales were lower townwide, you'd be looking at one of these scenarios where values go down and the tax rate would go up, unless when you have a population of properties that move disproportionately to the town averages, as happened here with these properties, and has happened last year with Waterfront, where they moved more than the average of the town.
So when does the appeals process kick in? I know February 1 was the deadline, and now the
So
board-
now, we have other abatements that I'm trying to get through to the board for the February 20th meeting, so that we can get those off of our slate, and then just have these ones here to focus on. Provided we have contact information, which one of the items on the abatement application, our phone numbers, we'll start reaching out for site visits, asking for any additional information that we can use. I did acquire some, information for Central Mass, a little larger area than I was looking for, but sales of other commercial industrial properties all around Central Mass. So I was looking at some in Oxford, buildings that I'm familiar with from my work there, that sold. So I'll incorporate that into my thinking. We do have a land sale from 2023 that, we're going to use as part of our analysis. So digging in and analyzing, we haven't started yet, but we have started collecting information. I would expect after the 20th, so, we want to get the other ones out of the way so that we can just focus on these, because these are much more interrelated than the other abatement applications we have. So getting those taken care of and out of the way where we can, and then just focus our attention on these.
And the deadline to complete your work on?
So we have 90 days from when the, is excellent question, thank you. We have 90 days from when the applicant files. I hope to not take that amount of time. If it is going to go beyond that, we can extend the deadline in mutual writing between the assessor's office and the applicant. So if we get to that, again, through the chair to the taxpayers, the assessor will initiate and send a letter to you, to the address where the tax bill is mailed. And the taxpayer simply needs to sign that and return it, and that extends the deadline. Typically, we would do 90 days at a time to make sure that we have time to get things done. We don't want to cross July 1st. It's just not fun trying to do abatements outside of the fiscal year, and Gene will appreciate that. But we want to get this wrapped up sooner rather than later. I would like to have everything done before the fourth quarter bills are due, but I can't promise anything because I don't know how far the rabbit hole will go. We don't want to rush it. We want to get it right. I would hope that we can present something to the board that's both fair to the taxpayers on Davis Street, but also fair to the rest of the taxpayers in town based on the values of properties in town. And, that's what we want to get to is what is that number? How do those models look? And present that to the board and get it voted on. And at that point, then each taxpayer would have their opportunity, each taxpayer that filed for an abatement would have their opportunity to appeal that decision.
It sounds like there's not a lot of subjectivity to an awful lot of what it is you do in order to generate these numbers, and it's contingent upon external factors that you might think are crazy, but they're the numbers.
Yes. And sometimes we can go, the ultimate check on that is the abatement process, and the taxpayers bring information to us that we can make the better case. There's no winners for us when we have it wrong. I say to taxpayers all the time, it makes my job harder if the information we're using is incorrect, because all that happens is the taxpayer is upset. There's no extra revenue. There's no one, patting anyone on the back saying, hey, great job, you stuck it to that group of taxpayers. There's none of that. There's unhappy taxpayers. There's an assessor that has to try and explain it to an unhappy taxpayer, and that's it. That's the only consequences.
And our Board of Assessors is running at full tilt. We've got 5 members.
It's a 3-member board. It is full, yes.
Who's the chair?
Yeah. Jack Blatchford, yes.
He's been through a fair amount of...
Yes, he has.
Sure, and process should play itself out.
Any other questions or comments from the board? No? Any questions or comments from folks that are here that have filed their abatements?
I'm sorry, I haven't filed the abatement yet, but I just have other questions about it.
All right, can I field his, and I'll,
Yes. What the assessor was saying,
if you could, just name and address, please.
Butch Hurwitz at 179 Davis Street, Ellis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The 2 buildings he's bringing up, I'd like to say something about both buildings. My building is 4,000 square feet, and it's taxed at the old tax rate. I was assessed at $388. Camelot is 14,000 almost, just shy of 14. So if you take my building and multiply it, double 3 times would be 1.2 mil, and 2 more thousand square feet, 1.4 mil. That building comps to the area very well. That didn't hurt the area. The building the two-story brick building shouldn't even be in our category, because if you look at the building, it's all brick. That building costs 3 times more than any of the buildings there. That is one of a kind in this town. All right? Then I just want to bring up, like, the land on Ledger Road, what you just mentioned, that sold for 1.65 mil. How did it get assessed for 600,000? Is what I'm saying. I mean, you pick up some of the sales. You look at the brick building, it sold for 1.6 mil. It's taxed at 1.3. I mean, you know, this is so far out of whack. I don't see how he's going to be able to fix it where it should be right. I don't care what Uxbridge is. This is Douglas. I printed all this stuff out. I mean, I probably won't help to really go over it, but let me just a couple of things. I can give you a copy. Okay. Camelot sold for 1.5 mil. It's only taxed on 1.25. All right, that's the real value of that building, because that's what it sold for. The bricks building, I mean, you can't even use it because he shouldn't even be there, because there's no occupancy permit. What's a building worth with no occupancy permit? Everybody knows in town it got destroyed, and it's sitting, if that, go appraise that building, get an appraiser, and I guarantee it won't appraise for 900,000. Do you agree?
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
so when we talked about the 183, the brick building, that was the one that we currently have at 1.2 million. That was on the 2022 sale. The 2023 sale has not become part of our analysis. That's the $1.6 million sale. So that's sort of the, what do we do with that sale going forward?
Here's, just for, you guys want copies, I can leave this. This is owned by...
I probably already went through all those when I went.
Okay. Yeah, but this one is kind of high. This one is 118 Davis Street, owned by, basically,
The DNR roofing.
right,
Yeah.
not the roofing.
Oh, the one behind.
Right.
Yeah, 116 is the roofing building. Yeah.
Right. It was assessed for 234,000. Now 1.6 million? I mean, really? How do we fix this? I mean, $1 million? I mean, 200,000 to $1.5 million more? Then the other building, I got it right here. I mean, the increases were, I don't see how he's going to fix them. Mr. O'Leary's building, he had bought 11 acres, he paid $220, but it was really less because the town got most of the money in the sale. So this number should be like 100,000, and it's raised at $840,000 from 200. I mean, these are not, where did they get the numbers from? Really? I mean, I don't think any of these are fair. You know, I mean, I took the time to do all this. I don't know if you want any of these packets.
I personally don't, because I've already looked at almost every
Okay.
one of them on the street myself.
But
So
these are so far out of whack. How can you get them down where they really belong?
that's going to be.
The method was used doesn't work. I mean, you have a system and the method, but the method, according to this, doesn't work.
Are those, all the buildings that you're referencing, are these in the zone that you had
don't
dealt
know,
with?
I haven't.
They are? You're shaking your head up and down?
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Monroe Street, 183 is where it ends at the brick building.
Okay. So my understanding is that when you start going into these abatements to reassess everything and look through, this entire zone
Yeah.
is going to be part of this model.
Yeah, and
Which you've conceded to is probably broken a little bit.
exactly.
Broken.
Absolutely.
It is.
So, well, Agreed, and I mean, the assessor has conceded to, this is not working, obviously that there's a problem, and you're seeking the remedy to try and get it so it's
Exactly.
in better shape.
Right. Like, here's an example. There's 24 acres industrial land behind my building, right? It was sold for $400,000. It's only assessed for $270,000. I mean, that's all. I mean, like the chairman, vice chair said, he's right. What he did, he checked everything out, and the numbers are really, really all over. Now, if you go on the other side of town, on Oxbridge and Sutton area, you got industrial land there. That's a bargain. That's like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 an acre. I mean, I think if the town needs money, they should look at where they're really low, hit a little bit there, do it there. And because those two buildings sold, it shouldn't, I mean, Camelot fits the bill on our old tax rate. That did not hurt us. The brick two-story building did, but like we talked about, the guy, if he could do it over again, he'd run.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, the long story short, and again, paraphrasing from the assessor, like, the tax rate and the tax bills really aren't a matter of the town's making any more or less money. We can only raise and appropriate so much based off of our levy. So ultimately, what's in question here is the valuation and the tax rate itself, which is what's going to be a variable.
Well, the valuation, yes, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some of the numbers, like I look at the new building, what got built in Douglas, that big one.
Oh, the big monster, yeah?
Right. There was no impact, that land sold for $17 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not one piece of property really went up around there. There was no impact like we got impact. We had one building sell for more than it should have, and we got impacted. That land was overpriced at 17 mil. And I got all the paper here from Bowler Street and all around there. Nothing went up. Not a thing.
Has that been
I can-
factored into that area as of yet,
If I
that
can
sale?
make a correction, that land went from, for one, that sale was considered not valid because it was a sale of multiple parcels or portions of multiple parcels, including land that was, town land that was sold as part of that as well. In addition to that, that parcel, in spite of the fact of the sale not being considered valid, went to almost $13 million, I want to say, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. Certainly over $12 million assessment on that, just the land. That was without having any of the building there, because on January 1st of 2023, it was still just dirt. So
So
that
if
was
that-
factored in, as well as 120 Gilboa Street was included in this industrial good neighborhood, and some other parcels, including the parcels that are under the industrial warehouse on the other side of 146, that we only have 8% of the building itself. But the land that it's sitting on was affected by this as well.
So ultimately, had the assessor's office not been able to deem that not valid as a sale, then overall that price would have had a much larger impact in the area.
Yes.
So the fact that we weren't able to invalidate that one sale because there was a subsequent 25% premium the following year on that exact same parcel is what really threw the monkey wrench into everything in this particular area.
I think I've said it to at least 3 or 4 taxpayers, but I could be wrong. It might have been 2 taxpayers twice each. I've had a lot of conversations about this, but 120 would probably have been easy to absorb without throwing a monkey wrench in everything. It was 183 sold, and then the subsequent sale was there, so it was visible, even though it wasn't part of the analysis, is what really forced the hand to say, you got to use this as valid sales, you got to get them into your analysis. It was hard to say, there's something up with this sale for 1.2 million when it subsequently sold for a premium after that. So, and that was,
It doesn't make any logical sense because the building was gutted right down to nothing. You can't even utilize the building. The building commissioner actually is making them sprinkle the building if they want to rebuild it. they screwed up by gutting the building. And I think that's part of his argument is because the building doesn't even have an occupancy, that the value is incorrect. Somebody might have paid stupid money for it, but
Yeah.
to find a normal buyer, that,
But
something seems.
I think it just,
what I'm hearing is he doesn't have the ability to understand that, to adjust from that. He's looking strictly at
the guidelines.
the guidelines, right? So, yeah, that might have been crazy to gut it, and it's not germane to his work. I think the biggest thing, Butch, is that the town has expressed that there's a means in which we can correct this.
Yeah, I hope so, because, I've been in this town for a long time. I like our town, and we're all here. There's more people here, because we really feel the assessors' thumb and rules doesn't work, because I got all this paperwork. Well, I brought copies for everybody, so that's why it looks big. But, I mean, I know real estate pretty good because I own a lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay? And George built that building there, I guarantee you couldn't get 800,000 or 900,000. Because it's going to cost you 600,000 to meet the guidelines what the town wants and to get it done. So if you bring that building into reality, we should go back right to where we were in taxes. Am I right or wrong?
Is any of the data that he's bringing up, like what Mike had brought up, that the building's been gutted and things like that, is that anything that can get factored into the model to help basically devalidate the
It
sale?
would depend on when it happened, if it was before or after the sale. So if it was,
Right.
again, I'd have to look at the information as it is, because the sale happened, and without someone saying that the buyer didn't know what he was buying, or he was unduly motivated, or that usually it's on when something sells for less than you have it assessed for, you think the seller was unduly motivated, whether it's in a homeowner, we think of a short sale or something like that. It's, like I said, we measure the market, and the market is based on sales. And typically, it's easy to find reasons to invalidate commercial sales, and these ones, we did look at them, and there wasn't that low-hanging fruit. If somebody has information that we're not privy to through public means that we have at our disposal, I mean, I can't talk about what's in abatement applications, but if somebody has copies of purchase and sale agreements or anything like that that proves something is or is not valid, that we can then use to, eliminate what could be potentially bad data, we can use that. But if we don't have that information, we're limited to making decisions based on the information we have.
So you're kind of sitting on the Jerry Maguire of help me help you.
Can I say, excuse me?
Yes.
Can I say something?
You can.
What happens if the building burns down and it's gone? You're going to readjust it, right? To bear land, correct? So the damage is done, so you got to say, okay, we got to readjust the building. Even though they paid for it without really realizing what they were getting in, the damage is done.
Wait.
Now, if you go sell this building today, the fair thing would be to do, just get a local realtor and do an appraisal on it, because I don't believe that building would do more than 800,000 to 900,000 in the condition it is, because you're going to spend about 600,000 putting the sprinkler system in, doing all the guidelines the town wants. Okay?
I wholeheartedly hear you, and let me just kind of go in, like, if we had to do that level of data for every time we did an assessment, we'd never set a tax rate, because he'd have to look at every property. Is there a sprinkler system in it? Does it have an occupancy? Did it potentially burn down? Is there maybe a wetland out back? Did this guy sell it at a fair price? What he has to deal with, because you're dealing with so many acres of land and so many properties, is I have data that's issued to me from sales prices in the region.
Right.
And that's kind of what he's going to run on.
Right.
And look at it. And then, as much as it's an imperfect system, we look to the taxpayer to come back and exactly like what you guys have did, like, hey, this is messed up. It doesn't make any sense to us. We have an abatement process that we can go through, which gives him the opportunity and time frame to sit down and give these properties the deeper look that they need in order to validate or invalidate the data, and then set the appropriate rate for you guys.
Well, correct. No, I agree. You got to do basically what you said, but this is kind of a special case because it's valued so high. And when you look at, everybody knows in town what happened. So, that's the way I feel. The building shouldn't hurt the whole street because someone made a mistake by paying too much money because they wanted that building in that bad. And
I don't disagree with you.
they can't even use it. So what is it worth without an occupancy permit? That's what you got to look at. Even though he paid for it, what is it worth if you put it on the market today?
Is, without disclosing too much, it's sitting in an abatement process, which shouldn't be discussed in public session. The lack of an occupancy permit being brought to your attention through the building official, whoever else it is, does that help your process?
Like I said, I need a lot
It's a
more
factor.
information. Yeah, it's a factor, but again, it's if there was an occupancy when it was purchased for the 1.6, then it could hurt or help. If there was no occupancy when it was purchased for the 1.6, that's probably bad news. Or we can invalidate the sale. You'd have to know all the, as much information as we can. Ideally, what is best in these folks' interest is proving that these sales were not market-based, that there was other influences. And unfortunately, poor business decisions are not one of the things we have for coding something out. We don't get to forgive people for their mistakes. We don't have that
We don't have
option
the
under
you're
legal
adult.
authority. Right. The law just doesn't, the law gives us reasons that things are invalid and poor business decision-making, because we don't know that. Somebody maybe has made that financial analysis that is a price that's acceptable for their business plan. We're not privy to that information, so that's why we don't have that out to say, God, this is so far out of whack of what we see for sales in Douglas, we just want to throw it out. We just don't have that option.
Gotcha. The environmentalists are going to be very mad at you with all that paper that you killed.
I know.
That's a lot of trees.
It's recycled paper.
Oh, it is? All right.
That will recycle it.
And certainly,
I can use the back of it.
if you have any notes, on those that could be useful for the Board of Assessors or for myself to present a case to the Board of Assessors, certainly, I don't know if you submitted that with your application or not,
No,
but,
I did put my application.
Yep.
Can I bring some of them to add?
so
to
the
it?
only thing required on February 1st was the application. Any supplemental information you want to give, we are happy to take.
Okay, I'll be down there then, and we'll see what we can do to
Okay.
try to straighten it out. And nothing against you, it's just, the numbers just look as good as they should.
Well, and honestly, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
No, I
So-
appreciate you letting us talk and represent ourselves and everything, and I appreciate it. And I think the board is a good board. Yes, sir.
No, I was talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I fully recognize and I agree with Tim that from Chris's standpoint, it's a math problem.
Yeah.
So he goes through his process of which to do. The different things that I said throughout the process was just to try to give him as much information for your abatement
Yeah.
process. This isn't something that we do. We're hearing you so we can make sure that you have a public platform in which to voice your concerns.
I appreciate
As far as
that.
183 Davis Street, you can check with the building department because he noted that on the day that they had all their debris on the front lawn, so you'll know when it was unoccupied, just based off of their records. So you could use that for the process. Mr. Tessino has
Mr.
something.
Chairman,
Yes.
since the previous speaker referenced our property by name, I just want to you got into the weeds, I want to get back out of the weeds for a second.
Oh, please.
Jim Tessino, Riddlebrook Development Corp. So 118 Davis Street was assessed for $234,000 last year, and now it's assessed for $1.6 million bucks. The value of the whole town of Douglas went up about $11 million last year, 10%. this one piece of property. There was a piece of property sold recently that almost touches it, that is 11-plus acres, that sold for $225,000, and I believe that buyer overbought just because it touched his property, right? So this is the problem with the process. It's the values. It's not the tax rate. The tax rate looks flawless. It's the values. We talk about this corridor, this industrial corridor that goes from Monroe to the town line. So the town, the assessor, and I want to be perfectly clear, the assessor and the assessor's assistant that was here, co-assistant?
Yeah.
Awesome, very helpful, very informative. I can't say enough good things about them. To be frank, I need to say that first. But they put out this current and previous tax thing. It's about 100 pages. I only printed the corridor that we're talking about. I only highlighted the industrial properties. Several of them did not increase 1 penny year over year, but one of them increased $1 million. Now, the piece of property that I referenced before that sold last year, was 11 acres for $225,000, has about 1,000 foot of frontage. So when we talk about property, we talk about what the use of that property is, industrial, commercial, residential. Whether or not it has wetlands or easements or other things that are restrictive use, that'll factor into the factor to depreciate the amount of property that can be used. So if my property is worth $1 million, 40% of my property can't be used, the value is adjusted by that. We're not talking about any of that stuff. We're talking about a failure in the valuation. That's all it is. So me being relieved because I show up at my abatement hearing and say, half of my property is wet. Oh, it's only worth $800,000. That's not going to help. The evaluation is skewed, right? And that's what everybody, I think, is saying. That no one's complaining about the tax rate. No one's complaining about how you got to the tax rate. But if you go to that, like you guys can get this online. It's on the assessor's website. So when you look at properties, industrial properties in the industrial zone from Monroe Street to 146, many of the values stayed exactly the same. Now, they might have different characteristics, and the factor could have changed, right? So if one of these properties, and I'm not going to talk about the people's name, but one of them last year was valued for $28,200. And it's valued this year for $28,200. There's no way if you revalued that zone, it could be the same. So it would have went up in value, and then if it had a 50% not usable and 80% not usable, then the factor would apply. There's no way possible that it could be exactly the same value as last year. It's just not possible. I mean, the vice chairman got you to what I wanted to say, but then we got off track in talking about building values, and building values have gone up. I have a little bit of experience with building. Your insurances all went up. Everyone's insurance went up, right? Because it costs twice as much to build your building, right? And the value of that building's twice as much. Commercial property, way more expensive, and the vice chairman can tell you why. Because the building codes that have taken effect have almost doubled the price of commercial construction. So people scoffed up all of these pre-existing buildings, or in fact, built new buildings for no reason before these new energy codes took effect. That's why we have these empty buildings everywhere, right? You can swing a cat and hit 47 different empty buildings. I'm going to suggest some of the bigger developments that were in town that might be, top secret, no one talks about, have been put on hold. Right now, top secret information maybe, because we've saturated the market. I'm going to suggest that maybe the value of that property is going to go down because we've saturated the market. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball or anything like that. But the reality is the values are wrong. The problem with the process. So my taxes, the taxes on this piece of property went from last year, I just want to be accurate, just bear with me for a minute. Last year, the taxes, I sent a check for that first half of the taxes for, last year the taxes were $3,000. $371.73, and I paid my taxes. So this year, prior to being able to get a fair shake on an abatement, I had to run down to town hall with a check for $11,000 so I could pay my taxes for that one piece of property that I have to abate. Now, I could afford to do that. I'm not bragging. I had to collect cans all the way down to town hall and take them to the liquor store for the nickel so I could come pay the taxes. Not bragging, not
Good thing they were
bragging.
open.
But
They clean the street.
I had to pay $11,000 for the right to sometime in the future show up and try to change the way we reevaluate property. It's not me saying half my land's wet, fellas, here's a map, give me a credit. It's like I have to show up on the 20th, maybe, I guess, and I have to convince people, your system is horrible, it doesn't work, you need to reduce my value by $1 million. I just don't even see that possible. And I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Now, I have a full-time job, and then I have another full-time job, and then I take care of my mother, okay? Now, what I had to do is I had to fit into doing the research, making the abatement. I really appreciate your time. I know this isn't your purview. I know there's nothing you guys can do about it, you folk. And I only came because Butch made me come. But the reality is, it made sense because we're not just trying to say half my land is wet. I need some relief. We're saying the system is horrible and doesn't work, and you need to throw it out the window and figure out how to do it again. Now, I think raw land is an easy assessment, and that's what we're talking about, raw land, right? I don't even technically have a buildable lot because we only have 60 foot of frontage at the street, right? In my 17-acre lot, 3 acres of that is used to just get, past the other properties. You know the property we're talking about. His 11-acre lot has 1,000 foot of frontage. Paid $225,000 for it. I say they're almost the same. I say he's got a better lot because he has 1,000 foot of frontage. About 1,000, right? 1,000, maybe more than 1,000. Yeah, but it's 1,000 foot of frontage, though. You know what I mean? So I don't even think my property's worth that much. That was for sale for how many years?
Ever since I've been here.
Ever since you've been here. And if it wasn't next to your property, would you have bought it?
No. Nobody else.
We looked at buying it, and we didn't buy it. So I'm glad I came because Butch made me. The problem is, when I show up on the 20th, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that the assessor's assessing thing is horrible and you need to start from scratch. And again, he was very helpful, the office was very helpful. I don't think it's anything.
It won't be the 20th of this month.
No, it's the 20th of,
Maybe.
No, if I could clarify,
yeah.
a couple things. The 20th, I want to get everything else off. You file another abatement, those are the ones that are,
Yeah.
those are pretty straightforward, easy
So
to
are you
take care
telling
of.
me I got to
Then-
collect cans to pay
Yep.
the April tax bill?
No,
so
I hope
can
it
get
to
the
have-
abatement done? That's what you're saying? I
I hope
can
to have them done
Don't
before.
try to get them all the way to the town hall, you already got those. You're going to have to go on the back streets.
So, in the,
But I think the nip bottles are good for 5
The-
cents, too.
You get
I
a
will
for
be-
nip bottles? I don't know anything.
I will be reaching out and having multiple conversations with everyone that filed for an abatement, and if I can, get in touch with other people that didn't file for an abatement on the individual properties before information is presented to the board. It's not something that it's going to go to the board and you're going to have to make your case at that point. Hopefully have extensive conversations with everyone, gathering all the information. The second thing we talk about is the process. Process will largely remain the same, but when we mention on this slide here, once we take those influence factors, once we take that this land is 50% wet, that next step is, as I said, check to make sure that the models we're using at that point are accurate. So when we look at land that we've made those adjustments to and say, okay, well, these ones make sense, these ones do not, if overall everything still is out of whack, then we do extensive changes to the models to make sure that things start getting consistent and start making sense across the board.
But
So
we-
it's not a one-step,
No,
we're
no, I
going
get
to
it.
apply
We're already
influence.
beyond the wetlands issue. You know what I mean? Like, we're at a place where we took a piece of raw land that's really not buildable because it doesn't have the frontage, that was worth 200 and something thousand dollars last year. We said it's worth $1.6 million this year. And, you know, you said one thing that is confusing, and it will affect the revenue. It does affect the revenue. Because once you set the tax rate and you set the value, and then all of these people get their taxes cut in half, it affects the revenue. So it was really not correct to say it doesn't affect the revenue. It
So-
does.
Because whatever, if that gets cut, everyone else is taxing them.
Next
Well, no,
year,
not
this
exactly,
year.
no.
No, that's
If I
not how it
can-
works.
If I can correct, so every year, as part of the budget process, there's money set aside to account called overlay. That money is set aside for funding abatements. And then
Yeah, we
that
talked
money,
about that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
if that money is not used, it gets ultimately, at some point, released to free cash. So, again, the town will still collect the revenue. If it goes back to the taxpayers, it does not come out of anticipated spending for the town. It would just affect, what's left in the overlay
But it-
account going forward.
There'll be less money to turn back over to the town.
There would be, yes, but it's built into the budget for this exact purpose.
And I did, so this is an interesting document. I think it's about 100 pages long, 127 pages, something like that. It's really interesting. It just provides you, some basic information to get you where you are, the lot number, the address, and compares last year to this year, right? And again, the problem was, people in that zone, I only printed the zone off, with industrial property, that I didn't look at commercial, I didn't look at residential, had no value change. Several of them had no value change, and some of them did, right? And I got to be honest with you, I didn't dissect every single one. I did notice that this particular property had the highest increase in that zone. So it's just not right. I think it needs to be redone. And I'll tell you what, it's such a small zone and you generate so much revenue for very little expense, to be honest with you, that maybe you should hire an appraiser and figure out how to do it right. Maybe you need to do that, because I don't need to hire an appraiser. This is such a blatant miscarriage of valuation of this particular, I'm not talking for these people, I don't know exactly what these people have.
Keep going.
But it's such a blatant disregard for reality. $222,000, $1.6 million, that I am not going to pay for the appraiser to figure out how to do the job. It's not my job. And the only complaint I have about the assessor, and it's a small one, it's not even a big one, because he really does a great job. The only complaint I had is, there should have been a check that says, holy crap, this is, now, I'm not saying you can fix it, I'm not saying you can stop the mail, but you can at least run over, right, and tell me to sit down and say, you're going to get a $22,000 tax bill where you only got a $3,000 tax bill yesterday, and you didn't make one single improvement to that property. So sit down when the mail comes Tuesday. That's what he should have done. That's it. Other than that, and you could have brought popcorn over, too. I definitely am available. Butchie does have a single copy of everything that he has there. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. But this is a great, I don't know if you guys know this exists. And it's historical, so you can go to the one before and do year over year that year, and then you can go back before that. I mean, this is really great information. I didn't print the whole thing because I only cared about the zone there. So, any questions?
No, we're good.
Anybody want to add anything?
Great job. That was really well said.
All right, is there any other questions? Have we addressed everything that was out there?
Well, my only question is, when you-
Name and address, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Holly Tatro, 100 Davis Street.
Thank you, Holly.
So when you look back, you had mentioned how you didn't include the marijuana place, which is like right on the other side of Monroe Street. That's a new build. Does the initial value of that come into play at all? Because I would think that would be quite a bit lower. Does it adjust the figures at all? And then also, he was talking about a sale of $225,000. I know we had a sale of land right on, in that area that was around 200 and something. Are those things also taken into account? Or is it just the big buildings that were taken into account?
So as far as building values, without getting too long-winded, a brand-new building would start with a depreciation value of 0. As a building ages, it depreciates in value, and then there's a condition factor applied, which is basically maintenance and upkeep. So if you take a building and let it sit for 50 years, never paint it, never put a roof, never do anything to it, it's gonna deteriorate faster than a building that is continuously maintained. So we do apply a condition factor, which is basically it's in good condition, it's in fair condition, it's in poor condition, and that affects the amount of depreciation. So if you take two buildings that are identical and one's 30 years newer than another one, the new building would be worth more because there would be less depreciation. So that's the quick answer on buildings. As with all things, it's always more nuanced than that on the ground, and I would answer any specific questions to any specific building happily with any taxpayer, and I expect to do that as I visit any building with this process. Second question.
Land, as far as the land, I know there were a few, if we were including them, that was sold.
If there were land sales, they would have been part of the analysis. There were not any for this value setting cycle. This value setting cycle used sales in calendar year 2022. I do know there was a sale in 2023. If there's any additional sales in close to 2022, so late 2021 or early 2023, I'm happy to take a look at them because, as I've mentioned, it's just more information that we can use to counter what we had to use at the time. So land sales certainly would be part of the analysis. I've spoken with one taxpayer that did have land that was sold. It's been referenced a few times tonight. That I think that makes a very good case for part of the argument as the vacant land, not necessarily maybe helpful on some of the developed parcels, but certainly is applicable to vacant land assessments in that area.
So the answer is the sale data, but it was based off of 2022 sales?
Yes.
I
So-
think this land was in 2022, but I could get that information.
Yeah. Like I said,
So the other part of that too is, we have a property manager, so, and, shame on us, we don't really live around here, but we just own the property, but we didn't do the abatement by February. So you're saying we should at least do it now for 2025? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that the abatement process is underway for some folks, which is going to look at the entire area,
Okay.
which may end up with results for you guys that would result in a credit next, if it turns out, or there would be some adjustment made on the following year's tax bill?
Yes, so if there was, keep it simple for explanation purposes, not what I expect, or, if we took that whole section and said, well, everything was off and everything went down 20%, the people that filed for an abatement would get a 20% credit on this year's tax bills. Everybody's tax value is going to go down 20% for fiscal 2025. So they won't get money off of this bill because we need the abatement application to enable us to do that.
So
But we
any
would
changes
adjust the
would
property.
reflect next year?
Right.
So we should file an abatement? Or is it too late?
It's too late now. The deadline was February 1st.
So not-
And it's not something, and that's not something the board has any discretion over. It's a hard and fast state law.
Yeah. So it would be, as there's no abatement that you can do this year, so you'd wait until the following year's tax bill came out if there was no adjustment that was made?
Okay, yeah.
And you still disagreed, then you would file an abatement, get it in by February 1st, and that process would start for you folks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any other questions, comments, or points of clarification?
So, Chris Gardello, 174 Davis Street.
Yes.
So the assessor was just talking about valuation of buildings, right? So he had mentioned a new building would be zero depreciation because it's brand new. Now let's take into respect the brick building, the two-story brick building. What kind of consideration do you take into effect when you're doing this where that the building basically is demoed? The other question is that how does somebody work out of a facility where there's no occupancy? I was on the impression where that you don't have an occupancy, it's really, there's no value to it at all because there's no occupancy. So when you talk about a brand-new building and as it depreciates over the 20 years or whatever, as you mentioned, it needs a roof, where you've got this building that you're really putting the stake in the ground, this is the one that's really killing us, got completely demoed inside. The building's completely useless, but you're taking the full value for it and penalizing every other taxpayer on that mile road. So I just don't understand that.
Not everybody, though.
Well, right, you pick and choose, I guess, I don't know. Because my tax went from, it was 111,000 for my property of 2.45 acres, which over half of it's wet, to 433,000.
And you did get your abatement in with these folks?
I did, but, when I'm talking to them, oh, yeah, maybe we can get you $1,000. $1,000? $1,000, I don't need $1,000. I need $5,000, what I was paying for the last 20 years. All of these people here, we don't put any tax on the town, okay? There's no kids in school, we don't have any town water, we don't have any town sewer. Basically, pretty much everyone takes out of their building and goes right out towards Uxbridge up 146. So there's zero impact to the town, but we're getting jacked up on our taxes. Not to mention Route 16, that road is a mess. That's a whole nother story about the water that coming, you could have a kayak tournament down my driveway when it, sprinkles out. But in the meantime, we're paying full list price on taxes. And nobody, I think, that's why we're all sitting here, can make math out of it. Even you guys, you looked at it. The formula that is being used is just off whack. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right. No, understood, and I, again, appreciate you coming down and bringing that to our attention, and we just keep kind of going over the same cycle of it.
Did you notice there's a building up for sale now that just put a for sale sign in front of the door because of these taxes? Is that what we were trying to do, is drive this small amount of commercial business out of town because of the tax rates? That's what's going to happen.
Understood. I don't think that there was any...
Hopefully that building doesn't sell because it'll make matters worse.
Yeah.
Did you see the price on it?
Yeah, they're never going to get it. Because once they do a little review and see what the tax rate is, they're going to run out of here. They're going to go to another town that's a little bit more acceptable to a commercial company, a business that creates a lot of good taxes and puts very little stress on the town.
Understood. And I don't think any of the tax rate was set with anybody trying to be malicious or drive businesses out of town.
Great. Don't get me wrong. Going down to his office and having a chat with him, they're very, very, very helpful. That doesn't make it right.
Agreed. Yeah. And, as I had said, Chris actually made the concession. Obviously, something's broken here.
Yes.
And, give him the opportunity in the cycles to get through and see what we can't do to get it fixed. And understanding, when he looks at raw sale numbers, if it's anything like what I look at, I deal with sales engineers across the globe, and we have different numbers that come into us. I don't look at every single sale that goes in to know all the nuances from it.
Right.
I just say there's a gross revenue number, and this is how I'm going to make my budget. So it's probably the same idea. He's got, a few thousand buildings that are sitting in town that have sale data, and it's just raw numbers that come to him. He's not going to be able to dive into every one and go, okay, well, this is the brick building that's been gutted, and, there's no occupancy permit on it. And in the essence of trying to get things out in a timely manner, it's the building sold for $1.6 million. That's its value. The simple principle of sales is the cost of something is what the market will bear. If the market bears $1.6 million for that building because somebody's foolish enough to pay it, that's what the market bears. I don't agree with it.
Right.
And I'm on your point, you're buying a building you can't use. That makes no sense to me.
Right. So sums up. I don't know what it is, but it is what it is.
So, and he will, I know Chris, he will look into it. And
Yeah, he's always promised it already, so we can hope for it, but I will say that a $1,000 adjustment in the right direction south of what I'm paying, it's kind of salt in the wound, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, nobody really wants to, I completely understand where you're at with it. And, it's my sincere hope that whatever it is that's broken in the algorithm gets fixed and everybody can walk away
That's all we
happy.
can hope for. That's all we can hope for.
All right, is there anything else past this point? Yes, sir, I'll get.
Derek DeShane, 175 Davis Street. Question regarding the issue with the model and this math problem that has a problem. Just listening to what Chris had to say, one of the first words out of his mouth when he first started talking earlier was that we were targeted, that area, targeted. I know he explained why, close to 146 and whatnot, targeted to that area, stopping at Monroe Street. Can't look at the rest of the town, which, like Butch had, we have hundreds of papers explaining everything what's going on here. Then he switches gears halfway through his speech and said he's now looking at information from towns such as Oxford and other towns. How does that make sense as far as where you're getting your information from, as far as you're focusing on one isolated area of Davis Street for just the commercial buildings? Now you're saying you're looking at information from Oxford, other towns whatsoever. That just doesn't seem consistent, which kind of fits the inconsistencies of the valuations. So that's just my question of where is this information being pulled from? Is it just that area, or is he just throwing the darts at the dartboard?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you can answer that.
I don't think he's throwing dots at the dartboard. It's a math problem. That's where he started with, okay? So as far as him looking at Oxford and these other towns that he suggested, that's an effort in order to help you. That is why he's broadening his window of areas he's looking at. He started off with this, and it's all based off of those, he was very transparent, based off of 120 and 183 Davis Street. As you listen, and I gave Butch some information, as well as the assessor, that 183 Davis Street, it's already documented when they gutted the building, because the building inspector went down and approached them because they didn't get a permit, they put all the stuff out on the front lawn. Right? So there's information that's going to be used. Anything that Chris suggested, that he's going to look at these different towns and everything else, is an effort in which to help you get to a point that it makes sense, if it ever does, right? And there's no guarantee that it's going to make sense, but there's an effort being put into it, right? So now the process is going to everybody filled out their abatement form, so now you're going to go, he'll do his due diligence to get his information for the board that he has to deal with, and present the information and try to help you through that process, right? So targeted, it's targeted in a sense because you had those two buildings at each end of the street. That's why I asked them, how come we don't include the whole street? Why are we just using that one little spot? You just stopped at 183. There's another industrial property that's right behind 183 that's not included in that. That's 10 acres of land, and that's much lower. I know, because I looked at all these stupid properties along the street, not the names, just looked at properties, right? To get values. So the next step is exactly what's been said a couple times. It's going to go to the assessors. They're going to entertain everybody's concerns and see if they can come to a conclusion for you. This particular board can't really do anything for that. We're trying to assist and help as much as we can, put out information there, give our 2 cents so everybody's aware of it. Maybe something that you're thinking, but you didn't say it, but I'm thinking, and I said it like I started off with to try to set some of the information that was said at the last meeting, to put it out there, to try to help the process. So other than that, I don't think there's much more we can accomplish tonight. I think the next step is Chris is going to do his due diligence. He's going to reach out to every person that filled out an abatement form, like you said, your contact information's on there, and then the process is going to start. He's hopeful to get it done in the 90 days, but because of the amount of work that he has, it'll most likely go into the second 90 days from what I understood that he was saying, because there's a tremendous amount of effort that's got to be put into this. If you rush into it, you're not going to get the results that anybody's looking for. With that, I don't know what else to tell you.
Does that satisfy your question?
Yeah.
Excellent. You had a question?
Yes, Sim O'Leary, 124 Davis Street, soon to be 126 Davis Street, hopefully. Just a quick point of clarification, this Blackstone corridor neighborhood, what is the mandate that puts us in this special category? And what's the driving factor behind putting us in this special category?
Well, I don't think it's a mandate. I think it was just an area that was identified as a state as far as being a Blackstone corridor. The Blackstone corridor goes all the way down. It started off in 1986 with the Blackstone Valley Heritage Corridor. It started in 1986, and I think that's probably what they're alluding to. This wasn't actually designated, this little strip of land, as the Blackstone corridor. It's just, that's what the area is considered, and that goes all the way back to 1986.
Thank you, sir.
Probably looking for another
leads
date
to my
that I
second.
know. Why I know these dates, I don't know, but
No, I won't hold you to it, I promise. I'm not going to throw any more numbers at you than you've had tonight.
no, that's right. I like numbers. I can't remember names, but I like numbers.
Appreciate all your efforts tonight for everybody. So with that, the decision on ending at Monroe Street was clarified by the assessor as being a judgment call, right? If Gilboa Street and Davis Street, the industrial zone there might be 2 to 3% of the total 5, 6, 7% that we're talking about in the town, right? Why wouldn't it apply to the whole town if it's only another couple percentage points? Why are we so special? Is really the question that it comes down to.
We don't make that kind of money.
If I can answer through the chair, the three sales that we looked at, one being the invalid sale for
The cubes.
the cubes, which we couldn't directly put in the analysis, but you can't ignore it. And the other two sales were all in that area where basically at or near interchanges with 146. So that was why it was focused on that area. There were no commercial industrial sales elsewhere in town
So it
that
was
we could use.
strictly driven based on the fact that there were recent relevant sales that would help towards the analysis.
Yes. And, yeah.
So if there had been other parts of our commercial zone that were there, they would have been factored in as well.
If there were the same two sales, but one was way over on Webster Street and one was on the other extreme, then you would have looked at it and said, okay, maybe this is for the whole town. Unfortunately, it's still only two sales. You'd really like to have a whole lot of sales because that makes the models better. The more sales you have, the better it is. But,
Better comp data.
yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Not really, no, but I'll take it for now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Are we allowed to move on to the next agenda item now, folks? Excellent. Thank you all very much for coming and bringing your concerns to this board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are actually going to skip over agenda item number 3 because it is with our Labor Council, correct? All right, so we will go to agenda item number 4, which is moratorium for roads, second reading, and there has been some changes made to that. So in an essence of time, I would ask that the board review those changes. Any concerns or questions, and make sure that those are brought forward prior to the final reading. Anybody have any objection to that?
Bob Sullivan was on it.
Bob Sullivan.
This is only the second reading.
What about Bob?
Bob, it's only the second reading, man.
Yeah, but he's the one that dropped this thing off at like 3:37.
Yeah.
What do you got for us, Bob?
I don't really have much. It was mostly just cleaning it up.
We have a gag order on you, Bob. Come on up.
Yeah, Bob's there. Me and him worked on the changes, so.
Oh, you're gonna blame Bob? Bob did it?
It's all right. So what you're saying, Mr. Sullivan, is that it's all Bob and Eric's fault, and we should just deal with that?
Well, just read through it. Like I said, I think it just cleaned it up some, made it read a little better.
He saved you, Bob.
I know.
There weren't any real substantial changes. It was more grammatical and cleaning up the language to make it just.
we basically reorganized, put everything into little items.
I noticed the changes, the Douglas Highway Department is responsible for maintaining and updating the moratorium street list.
That was originally in there, just worded a little differently.
Okay.
This is the latest as of 3 hours ago.
Well, in the essence of time, yeah. It makes sense that we
Second reading.
take this and forward any concerns we have to Lisa, and then she can get them to Bob.
Yeah.
You know, for our next reading, because there's different things in here, like the, that I seen right off it, it's, full restoration is conducted per the requirements of the Douglas Highway Department Superintendent or duly authorized designee. Do they even have a requirement as of yet? So, you don't have to answer that now, but that's one of the things that I've seen right out of the gate. So I think it might make sense that we just forward all the questions we have to Lisa. She can send it off to Bob Squared, as Gene
Bob
refers
Squared?
to him. Yeah, Bob Squared, and she
That's what they
refers
call
him
us.
as.
To the
And they can
Bobs.
get the answers to us for the next, or at least be able to address them for the next reading.
That works. Does anybody have any issues with that?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Good
Pass
recommendation.
those around, or?
Thanks, Bob.
Does that make the Bobs happy?
I can't not allow Mr. Menerick to say at least 3 or 4 words, not 30 or 40, but 3 or 4 words before he goes, because he looks like he's anxious to
What do you
speak.
got to say, Bob?
I just have one question on an abatement. No, just kidding, just kidding. If you would pass, Max, pass that to those two gentlemen. On the back is the table that Mr. Fitzpatrick requested, so review that as well.
Okay.
That's in addition to the copy that was turned in at 4 o'clock this afternoon. This was finished about 5:30 tonight.
We'll try and get it done by 4:30 next time, Bob.
I'll try.
All right. Okay. Was that it, Bob?
That's it.
So this document is our second read?
The second read, 2A and 2B, if you will. The one with the graph on the back will be the latest and greatest.
Beautiful.
Which includes,
Will these other dates be filled into here so we know what they represent? Like,
That is current as of today.
so Southwest Main Street was done in 2023?
That list came from Adam Furno.
Oh, the other end of Southwest Main Street. I get it.
It's a long one.
Yeah, there's 2 Southwest Mains on there.
I'm gonna get them for that. Can we skip
The
right over to
yeah.
the town administrator's report?
Well, we got to
Yeah, I
open
can send that to you, no
the
problem.
warrant for the,
No, I know that, I'm just teasing.
but it's not a bad question.
5:30. I jumped in.
All right, so we're all good on the moratorium thing. We have our marching orders, we have the latest from you, Bob. So the select board is going to review it. And any questions, comments,
And
or?
we don't have this electronically, so I would have suggested everybody keeps their copy.
Okay.
You don't have this on there.
I just requested.
You will get that.
Well, we
She will
don't have
have
it,
it
so we
in her
should keep
email
these.
box tonight.
You can keep those.
You keep whatever you'd like.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman.
As I was saying, after review upon the copies that you keep and any electronic copies that should happen to come from you, from Ms. Freeman, if there's any questions, comments, or points of clarification that are required, please send them back along to Lisa, and she will forward them along to the appropriate parties to be discussed at the next Selectmen's meeting. Does that work?
That works.
Excellent. Love it when a plan comes together. Yes, sir.
26?
What? Okay. We have to open the warrant for the annual town and special town meeting and possible votes.
motion to open the warrant, spring ATM and special town meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, does that require a roll call? No. All those in favor say aye.
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 What's the date of that?
May 6th.
Okay, FY25 budget discussion and possible votes. Here it is. We have a budget for FY25.
Yes, that's published at 9 o'clock at night. My report's brief tonight, we can skip it. I've been sick for 2 weeks, so I presented this the other night to the Finance Committee of the town. So this is tab 6 in your packet. Just going to hit the highlights of the process. Your budget is an allocation of revenues to your service budget, costs to providing services to the people of the town. And each year, we don't necessarily go all the way to zero because we continue to have the same staff working through the same compensation system, and we buy an almost identical basket of goods every year to supply the effort to provide services. So it's a fancy intellectual trick to do a zero-based budget every year, but the reality is it's kind of redundant. We look instead at what new revenues we anticipate to come into the town, and this year there is a significant increase in new growth as a result of the warehouse construction. The building is being valued as an empty shell, and it still has significant value even without a tenant and without any personal property inside it, because it is a significant structure and represents a very large investment by the developer. Then there would be our normal new growth, which is residential construction, all those things that add value to a home, but the lion's share of it is typically new home construction. And then an annual 2.5% year-over-year increase in the levy, which is allowed by Proposition 2.5. So that's how our revenue base is ascertained. We don't usually build in any significant changes in state revenues. Anything that is better than last year coming out of a state revenue sharing program is just gravy. Like it's been a flat number in this town for a very long time. I do hasten to remind people that overall, if you add up Chapter 70 pilot and other unrestricted general government assistance from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as a proportion of its budget, Douglas is one of the most generously supported communities in the state. It goes to the history of the town and its, when it was a much smaller, I don't like the word affluent, but was a small working class community and, modest homes and only about 2,500, 3,000 residents. And a lot of those formula programs were put in place at that time, and the town has been held harmless as those programs have grown around the state, to the extent that, you now have well over 40% of your revenue base is this static amount of state aid that comes in. In building a forecast for the next year, we got a couple of things to take into consideration, not the least of which is inflation. Throughout the economy, everyone has felt this bite, and it's been especially true of groceries and actually eating out. Eating out has become phenomenally expensive compared to where it was a couple of years ago. And there are other items in that basket of goods that a municipality would typically buy that have been more or less stable or even have gone down. If you think back 5, 6, 7 years ago, the cost of a gallon of gasoline was actually higher than it is now. And as a matter of, of the share of your wealth that you're using to put into your car, it's actually continuing to go down. So there's been this countervailing anti-inflationary force, but really real estate, home construction materials, labor, all those costs have been going up, and everybody's feeling the pinch. We predominantly spend money in the town on our personnel. So we become highly sensitive to inflationary periods because our personnel start coming back to us and saying, I'm not keeping pace. My real wage is shrinking each year because I can buy less and less with what I'm compensated. We also have a tremendous amount of pressure on the labor market for specific professions, police officers, paramedics, some of the more highly specialized jobs that are done in town hall that require a fair amount of training and experience to be able to successfully execute. So that day and age, look, I'm a Rhode Islander, so I get it. Mikey needs a job, so we'll set Mikey up with a job. And it's not that way anymore. The former fire chief used to say it best, you can't go to Spags and get yourself a pair of gloves and call yourself a firefighter anymore. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of training and a lot of involvement with in-service training and ongoing continuing education, so it becomes an expensive proposition. This year, we have negotiated follow-on contracts with both the police and fire, and those tentative agreements are completed. And 2 of the select board members participated on those negotiation teams, and I think from being able to sit through those 5 or 6 sessions that we had with each of those unions, you heard the conversation and understood the decision being recommended to the rest of the town for town meeting ratification, that in order to stay competitive and to continue to deliver the services we're delivering, we would have an increase this year in those personnel budgets. So as you go through this spending plan, all of general government, so the selectman's office, including the town administrator and the assistant to the board and the administrator, the finance office, including finance director, the assessors, treasurer collector, finance committee, information technology, town clerk, public building maintenance, the permanent building committee, community development, and any other general government, the smaller accounts like the moderator's stipend. The entire increase is $49,339 for all those departments. So we nip and tuck here and there. There may be increases on salary side, but we hold the line on expenses, so it's $49,000. But in public safety, the combination of the contracts for everybody, because this was contract year for the chief, the lieutenant, and the entire police force, and it's the second year of the dispatcher's contract. Total wages are slated to go up $180,000, and we're going to buy 2 cruisers this year and set aside $140,000. So the police department alone is $319,918, so let's call it $320,000, or just about 8.5 times what we're spending on general government in terms of an increase. Fire is going to show fire and ambulance will show a slightly unexpected trend, and that's because fall town meeting is where we made some of the most significant adjustments to the underlying structure of the fire department, because we said we were going to budget 70 hours a week of paramedic time per diem at the per diem rate. And this budget carries that forward and continues it. So in terms of this year's budget and fiscal '25, there's not a huge delta. The change was from '23 to now. But overall, quick math in my head, that one is 83 and the other one is 87, so just about $170,000 increase year over year from '23 to '24 for the fire department. But again, the other public safety functions, only modest increases. The highway department, I'm going to try to battle back here. Give me a second. Please also recollect the police department budget includes the addition of a new officer, so a second school resource officer. And in the highway department, I'm budgeting for them to get an additional person. So instead of a crew of 5, they would have a crew of 6. An item that I think should be discussed, because I think it is a policy initiative for the select board to decide, not finance committee, is whether we want to look at the second-in-command position at highway and really morph that position into a facilities director that crosses over with the schools and is on the town payroll, but is looking out for the town's interest with all of its buildings. And the idea here would be you find somebody who has proper credentials and can drive a snowplow and run any machine requiring a hoisting license. They could still be an active member of the Public Works Department, but their focus would be on our public buildings. We feel there's a significant need for this, Superintendent and I. We don't have the resources as a community to invest deeply in having outside consultants crawling all over the place, checking out heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, electrical capacity of our buildings. Someone who is familiar with building management and facilities upkeep should be able to have the basic skills to arrange for that and to arrange for good maintenance schedules. Our overall annual spend on maintenance for major building systems is a very large sum of money. And in my view, my recommendation to you is that we do this so that we can try to get control of that. Because I feel like it's growing at an unnatural rate, and it reflects some inaccurate assumptions about how long these things can actually last before they break. In terms of the next major change in budget spending is the library. I'm recommending or requesting of the Select Board and Finance Committee a total increase of just about $106,000 in the library's budget, about $53,500 in wages and $52,500 in expenses. The library has been one of the most modestly increased departments of the town government really since the override. The override kept the library open. The town then invested, if you recall, grant funds and other initiatives to improve the overall efficiency of the building so that it would be less expensive to operate. The library director is requesting some additional hours so that he can normalize his schedule and be open longer periods each day, and achieve that with, not people being paid at the director's level, but rank and file workers that are passionate about the library's mission. This would be the year to make that change. By far the largest increase that I'm recommending in the budget is $590,000 for the Douglas Public Schools. Again, hindsight should help you understand what I was trying to do looking forward. We had an expensive teacher contract, and we had a date uncertain at which this warehouse would come online with revenue. So to get from where we were to where we will be next year required, first and foremost, one-time transfers of free cash to support the funding of the contract. A year where the department really needed to rely on its own accrued reserves, and then a year where they get a substantial increase. Over time, that trend would be a significant increase. After many years of 1%, 1.5% increases to the bottom line of Douglas Public Schools. The superintendent puts forward a good case for recurring expenses that will significantly improve his ability to conduct his mission. The Douglas Public Schools, like public schools in every community, have no choice. They must accept every student and educate every student that walks through the door. They don't get to pick and choose. In other words, they're not BVT. They can't cherry pick. They have to provide a service to everyone who needs it. BVT, I'm putting in for a fairly large increase. We haven't gotten their budget yet. I have reason to believe that they're going to be close to 10%, which is what I've built in here. So overall, the education budget would go up by, I'm going to round up to the nearest thousand, $677,000. There's a small break here. School bus contract is probably going to cost less next year. That's that negative $78,000 number that you see there. And then finally, in terms of our major fixed costs, the town continues to have the same experience as all of the other Worcester Regional Retirement Board members, of roughly a 10% year-over-year increase into God knows when to fully fund the pension program. Excuse me. As you know, the fund is not well-funded. Its funding ratio is right around somewhere between 43%, 46%. I haven't checked the most recent numbers. Those are very weak numbers, and that is why the town's assessment continues to go up 10% year over year, every year.
Playing catch up.
They're trying to catch up and trying to still get this thing funded by, I think their target is 2036, which is pie in the sky. We do expect a premium increase for property and casualty. I do need to assess the board's desire whether to have that conversation again with property and casualty. I know, look at the enthusiasm from Selectman Bowden. He just jumped right up. He was doodling on his paper, and now he's ready to run.
To say it's a good idea.
I wouldn't do that to you, Hod.
I have to put it out there that
Mike would, though.
the thought process of going out every 3 years or so is to keep somebody honest and make sure they're dealing with us with proper rates. I think we had a mixed bag. After the last process, I think there was, at least from my perspective, a little bit of regret that the decision worked out the way it did, because subsequent events proved that we had difficulty with this partnership. And, you know, a lack of clarity around exactly who was writing our paper and who was going to help us out, and not much help when we felt a party was liable for doing great damage to the town. We couldn't get them to file a lawsuit. So that's that. But if that's, you know, we could always just take the renewal. Okay, guys, you don't have to kill yourself. The health insurance piece, I've budgeted presently for a zero. The primary driver of what costs us money here is our claims. And our claims reflect inflation in the healthcare market. For the past 2 years, we've run extraordinary low medical loss ratios. And so no matter what's going on in the healthcare market in terms of 8% year-over-year cost increases, it didn't affect us because we were only paying 70 cents on the dollar in terms of how much of our premium we were spending on claims. So we built a fairly substantial surplus. It's a little too early to tell, it being only the beginning of February, but we're not in a particularly good place right now. We had a large claims experience in October and another large claims experience in January that puts us right about 105% of losses to working rate paid in. Now, given the size of our surplus, that's not anything to be terribly worried about. And typically our plan, as we come to the end of the fiscal year, people just hold back for the new fiscal year, so because their deductible is going to recharge. So we don't typically see the same level of claims experience through the spring. Often June is a big month, but I'm still hopeful that we might get back down into the 90s. The underwriter's likely to tell us that taking a zero may not be a sustainable practice. So I'm going to reserve judgment and maybe increase health insurance 2.5–3%, as opposed to the zero I have in there right now. That, in a nutshell, is the major categories of outlays. This budget is available at a much higher level of detail. I'm not going to print out that general ledger-driven budget for you unless you ask for it. This is the actual, well, no, this is a close facsimile to what will be presented in the FinCom flyer. The labels may change at the top of the column because it will reflect the Finance Committee's final action, but this general thought process of showing 3 years and then showing the difference between the proposed 25 budget versus the end of 24 is the typical format that we use. So this is a nice shorthand. Are there any activity codes that seem to be going up? It's obviously the personnel piece.
Okay.
The school number is higher than, I think we probably talked about 6 months ago. Is the school on board with that number, or are they saying inflation being what it is, challenges what they have? Plans as good as they were a couple of years ago, just not.
I am loath to speak for the superintendent. Our last conversation was a good one. I think he feels like I'm only 5 digits short of where he had hoped to be, and that he might be able to work with that constraint. This was a more communicative year in terms, because we had those meetings over the summer, which we dove into what their issues were and what they were looking to fund. And the only question was, what was going to be possible? I will say that we had, for the longest time, estimated that the warehouse would generate about $1.1 million in new growth. And after the analysis was done by the assessor and by our evaluation consultant, it was closer to 1.8. So there was a little bit more room to move in the direction of the schools had wanted us to, because there was more resources available.
Any other budget questions? Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Meeting minutes and possible votes. And we just have the December 19th minutes, right?
Yep. Good?
Yeah.
We're good to go. Make a motion to approve the Tuesday, December 19th, 2023 meeting minutes as written.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the monthly review of the 2024 goals and possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of brevity, I'm going to move as quickly as I can and just hit some highlights. This is tab 8 in your packet. I'm going to start on page 2 with the system improvements or merit considerations at the senior center. The third bullet, implementation and maintenance of the walking club program. The walking club program has been started. It works out in our gym, and at times when pickleball is not using the facility. It's always great to see that the assets of the town are being utilized by its citizens who pay for them, and it's not just a cold, dark, empty space. People are actually using the gym. In terms of, I thought I had circled some stuff. I guess I didn't. and this goes to both highway and community development. We have begun a thorough review of our options for stormwater bylaw and associated rules and regulations. Obviously, this comes out of the conversation from recent events in town where we feel like the legal authority for different boards to act isn't crystal clear and doesn't give people a warm and fuzzy on what firm foundation they need to have in order to take enforcement action. During Bill Cundiff's time as town engineer, one of our associated vendors who was working on the MS4 project had been tasked with drafting a stormwater bylaw, which obviously is a template that's been followed in other towns. Both Matt Benoit and I have been through it and given it quite a few edits. So we're kicking it back to council to try to move it forward to be ready either for fall town meeting or not this spring town meeting, but the one after that. I would prefer to do it in the fall because it would be a topic unsullied by long conversations about budgetary and other financial matters, and it would simply be held on the merits of stormwater. But clearly, if this pattern were to repeat even a couple times over the next 10 to 15 years, where we got 8 inches of rain in January and however many 10, 11, 12 inches of rain in December, our ability to make sure that site developers are keeping their problems on their own property needs to be tied to the legal authority of the town. And so that's where some energy has been put in, and that would be a significant improvement. For the police department, we have included the first bullet point, the finalization of mass casualty incident hostile emergency protocols with fire and ambulance and attention to incident command and response components. This past week, we held a tabletop exercise that was directed by MEMA with the leadership of the school department. And it was an entire morning exercise that was generated around a hazmat scenario where, a rampant, difficult chemical were released as a result of a cleaning accident. And it just helped everyone begin to think through the process of how would we deal with that many people sick and injured, and the need to mobilize the entire town or keep certain roads open for traffic and other roads open for parents trying to recover their kids, and reunification centers and all the rest of it. It was a very positive thing. I think we're going to do it again. But the fundamental elements of cooperation between the school department and the municipality are very strong in this area. On my goals, police and fire union contracts completed in time to include the results in the budget. That is, as far as I'm concerned, completed. There's completion of the police chief, police lieutenant, assistant chief, fire and ambulance contracts. I've done 2 of those 3. The town's operating budget presentable form by January 16th, 2024. We were about 2 weeks after that before we made the presentation, entirely a function of my being out sick for the better part of 2 weeks, or in and out sick. And the last bullet point on that page, municipal staff recognition program policy is finalized. We still have to work on the policy, but I think you can see the program has now had 2 events, and it's an ongoing recognition of some of the extraordinary service in town. And I think it's an absolutely essential building block for morale in this building. Lastly, there's a bullet here under the treasurer's goals, town's investment policy brought up to date in compliance with state rules. That work has begun with your passage of that policy. So we are 1 full month into this 12-month set of goals, and we've got some progress there against some of those bullet points. Are there any questions?
No, sir. Well done. Floor's still yours, your report.
So I have no report except to give my deepest, sincerest apology to Vice Chairman Fitzpatrick and everyone else in Town Hall that I managed to infect with this horrible form of influenza, including Lisa. It is all my fault. I will take all the blame.
The Westport Plague.
The Westport Plague.
Oh, even Moneric got it.
Moneric got it, I almost killed Moneric. The virus lasted like 4 days. It was the ridiculous some crazy immune response that just made you feel like you were having an asthma attack, lasted another week after that. So, Godspeed to anybody out there who hasn't gotten it yet. Your time will come.
I feel like I'm on the verge.
All right.
Excellent.
That's all the rest of what we covered tonight. So.
Thank you very much, Matt, and it was nice of you to apologize to all these folks that you infected with the Westport Plague.
But I still owe him one, he's not off cold.
Yeah. Wait until summer if you could.
Okay, so we do have one thing under open session topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Was sent in by our town clerk from, basically it's Dear Chairman Morris and members of the board. As you may be aware, the Votes Act allows for in-person vote-by-mail early voting for all elections, and the Board of Selectmen votes in its favor. We would like to opt in to provide our voters an option of convenience for anyone who would prefer not to vote on Election Day. She's respectfully requesting the Board of Selectmen vote to approve in-person early voting for the presidential primary that will be held on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, for the following dates. It would be Saturday, February 24th, from 9 to 4, Monday, February 26th, from 8:30 to 4, Tuesday, February 27th, from 8:30 to 6, Wednesday, the 28th, from 8:30 to 6, and Thursday, the 29th, from 8:30 to 4. The early voting would be held at the Municipal Center in the town clerk's office. So I believe I would be looking for a motion to approve the request from the town clerk for early voting.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that brings us to the Bonin motion.
Only A, we're skipping B.
Only A.
All right, I'll make a motion that we move into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, and/or individual as it relates to the Douglas Police Department. And then to leave executive session for the sole purpose of going to bed.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Postma, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Morris, aye.
Bone and I.
Smith, aye.